Princess Ali-san was the most beautiful, charming, and radiant woman in the entire universe. Anyone who said otherwise would be executed. The whole galaxy spoke of her perfection, and rumors about her many suitors were so abundant they formed their own entertainment industry. Not that Princess Ali-san had time to spare for the wretched nobodies who sought her hand. Some of them were pretty enough, but none filled her with the fire she yearned for. None made her hearts flutter like in the story vids. They were beneath her, one and all. The princess was the sole heir to the Illyrian Empire, the greatest, most cosmopolitan, and most technologically advanced union of worlds to ever exist, the sole source of art, grace, and civilization in a cold and brutal universe. Thousands of worlds clamored to join the empire, desperate to receive the benefits of greatness. Other nations regarded the Illyrians with envy, hopelessly wishing to achieve a fraction of the wonders that were Ali-san's birthright. Yes, the Illyrian Empire was truly the best in the universe. Anyone who said otherwise would be executed. Ali-san spent another 4 minutes admiring herself in the hollow-viewer, as was her duty as princess. Her skin was flawless, smooth and shiny, and just the right shade of green. Her hair was the color of embers, flowing down her back like rivers of fire. Her eyes were a deep, dark blue, bringing to mind the endless depths of an ocean. They sparkled with passion and intelligence. Her lips were sensual, her eyebrows. Ali-san frowned. Her eyebrows were not as perfectly trimmed as they should be. The princess almost broke her sacred duty to glare at the automated facial care device on her bedside table. Damnable machine. Melissa had done a much better job. The woman had been an artist. More than that, she'd been a friend. Sort of. Almost. She'd talk to Ali-san sometimes when she worked, at least. If only Melissa hadn't caught the eye of the king. If only Queen Karine hadn't noticed. If only. Ali-san's eyes were tearing up. She stubbornly held them open and took a deep breath. She was a princess. A princess does not cry, nor could she close her eyes during splendor review. Ali-san ran a careful sleeve across her face just to be sure no moisture escaped. A tear now would be unacceptable. What was done was done. Melissa was gone, and there was nothing the princess could do about it. A replacement would be hired soon enough. Melissa had just been a stylist anyway. It's not like she'd been a real friend. A princess didn't get real friends. The hollow-viewer chimed. The splendor review was complete. Princess Ali-san sighed. She didn't feel splendorous today. She didn't feel splendorous at all. She closed her eyes and composed herself, forced herself to smile. A princess must keep up appearances. She pulled out her recording tablet. It was time to record a snippet of wisdom to send to her people. Before Ali-san could decide what to record, the door to her chambers chimed. The door opened. A man walked in. General Tyron, the overseer of the Home Guard. Despite his age, the general was a brick of a man, a wall of muscle with a shaved head and bristling white mustache. His skin was a dark shade of green, tough and leathery. The man was resplendent in his black uniform, with a chest full of shiny medals. He was also holding a phaser spear. Why did he have a phaser spear? Ali-san had never seen the general carry one. His job was to command. His sidearm had always been enough. There wasn't anything special about the spear, a black haft leading to a crossguard with a holographic targeting array. Above the crossguard was a blade of Akavi crystal, harder than diamond and sharp enough to pierce chromium with ease. General Tyron. The princess greeted the man. Her smile froze for a moment as she noticed more guards filing in behind the general. A lot more guards. I didn't expect to see you today. Something was wrong. Ali-san's smile slipped. Tyron had always been a serious person, disciplined and precise. Now fury and regret echoed in his gait. Grief and rage strained to enter his expression. She'd never seen him so out of sorts. Elisa An gave up on the smile and asked, "What's happened?" "Your Highness." The general of the Home Guard bowed. "I bring ill news." "What is it?" Elisa An asked. "King Dirac and Queen Karine." The general faltered. Tyron breathed out through his nose and started again. "I'm sorry, child. Your parents are dead." "What?" Elisa An must have misheard. "That can't. I mean, it couldn't be. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake, Your Highness." The man's voice was grave. "Your parents are dead. I killed them myself." "You what?" The princess switched her gaze from the general to the other guards. She didn't like what she saw. No shock, no grief. No, just anger and discipline and grim purpose. "No, why would you?" She searched his face, hoping to see a sliver of deception or doubt or anything. But what she found? Satisfaction. General Tyron hadn't just killed Alisan's parents. He'd enjoyed it. "How could you?" "There is worse news," Tyron continued. "Princess Elisa An, by the order of Queen Cindy of the Elurian Empire, you are to be executed." The phaser spear spun in his hands, the tip of the spear pointed at Elisa An. Executed? The princess swallowed her fear, eyes narrowing at the man with the spear. "Aunt Cindy is not the queen," she told him. "She will be," the general informed her. A hint of sadness tinged his voice. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. Truly, I am. Melissa spoke well of you." "You knew Melissa?" It was all the princess could think to ask. She wanted to scream at the man, to order the guard to arrest the traitor, to attack him with her bare hands, maybe. None of that would help. He was armed and had 20 home guards backing him up. Elisa An needed time, a plan, anything she could think of to survive the next few minutes. "My niece," the traitor said shortly. The crystal tip of the phaser spear glowed yellow. "I'll make it quick, Your Highness. It's the least I can do." "Wait!" Elisa An's protest was futile, a line of light burning through the air. The princess cried out, raising her hands in a hopeless gesture of defense. Only she didn't burn, didn't die. Something had stopped the phaser. "That's not going to happen." A rich baritone spoke firmly. The air shimmered. A man appeared. Elisa An's breath caught in her throat. He was beautiful. Smooth skin the color of cream, short hair like spun gold. It was tousled, like the man had combed it nicely and then ruined it with exercise. A strong jaw and a tall, lean body. From the neck down, he was clad in strange metal armor. It wasn't steel or silver, but something in between. It was so reflective, it nearly glowed. His shoulders were broad, and his waist was narrow. He was perfect. The man held a diamond-shaped shield in his left hand. In his right was a sword. The shield was raised and held out to the side, protecting Elisa An instead of the man holding it. That must be what had stopped the phaser. "A human!" Tyron, the traitor's eyes widened in surprise. Then they narrowed. "No, a knight." His guards tensed at the word, hands tightened on weapons. "Both." The newcomer agreed. He sketched a bow without lowering the shield. "Brock Holloway, Knight of the Nye, at your service." Elisa An gasped. She couldn't herself. A Knight of the Nye. The Order of the Nye was far from the Elurian Empire, but their fame had spread much further than that. Protectors of the weak, bane of the wicked, wielders of the Eidolon, ancient weapons of unimaginable power. Only a human could become a knight, but the knights were not a part of the United Worlds of Gaia. They answered only to justice of the Eidolons themselves. "I doubt that." Tyron leveled his spear at the man. "The Knights of the Nye are not welcome in Eluria. What business do you have here?" "Didn't you know?" The human smiled. I'm Princess Alisan's new bodyguard. He turned to the woman with a lopsided grin. Isn't that right, Princess? His eyes, gods, his eyes. They were brown. Yes, brown. Princess Alisan couldn't think of anything poetic to say about brown eyes. Brown was not a poetic color. It was unfortunate because Alisan very much wanted to wax poetic about them. The man's eyes were full of life and fire and intelligence. Those eyes captured her, pulled her in. She felt she might drown in them. The human's grin faltered a little. Right, Princess? He prompted again. Alisan came back to herself with a start, mortified that she was obsessing over an alien's eyes when death was at hand. She swallowed. Yes? Yes. She nodded vigorously. Brock's my bodyguard. It's Brock, Princess. The man corrected. He turned back to the traitor and his guards. I'll give you one chance. Leave peacefully. Tyron kept his spear pointed at the man. A knight cannot raise his blade for the wicked, he quoted. You have no business here, Brock of the Nye. I just told you I'm a bodyguard, said the knight. Your rulers were wicked, but the princess hasn't earned that title. His sword melted and shifted, morphing into a large and powerful-looking gun. Stand down, General. You know you can't beat me. We don't need to beat you, said the traitor. We only need to kill the girl. He made a sharp gesture. The other guards fanned out, surrounding Alisan and her protector. Have it your way. The knight pulled the trigger. General Tyron disappeared in a flash of light, along with 4 of the guards. Ash and melted metals plopped to the ground where they had been. Brock thrust the shield at Alisan. Here, hold on to this. The princess grasped the shield by reflex. She expected to drop it once the human let go, but it was surprisingly light. Brock turned back to the guards. Phaser beams flashed toward him. More beams came for Alisan. She shied back, cowering behind the shield. No beam touched her. Some of the guards ran forward, thrusting with their spears. Brock's gun shifted back to a sword. The blade flickered as the human danced into the enemy. The sword sliced through the spears like they were made of paper, then flickered through the home guard with no resistance. Blood spilled, and men fell in pieces. It was over in seconds. Brock looked over the room, searching for additional threats. Satisfied, he flicked the sword one more time, removing the blood. His face was splattered, but his armor was still spotless. Those piercing eyes met Alisan's. Are you all right, Princess? Alisan nodded numbly. She'd seen death before. She'd ordered more than a few. The blood and scattered body parts were more grisly than the clean immolation of a phaser. But she could deal with it, probably, as long as she'd breathed through her mouth. Good. The knight sheathed his sword and held out a hand. Alisan gave him his shield back. The shield retracted into the man's armor. Brock pulled out a datapad. Here, sign this. Alisan frowned at the pad. What is it? Terms of employment, said the knight. What does... Alisan frowned at the man. I don't understand. The order doesn't do regime change. Brock clarified. We don't do politics, and we don't do wars. On the other hand, there's no rule against a knight taking a side job, as long as that job doesn't violate our code. So, if I hire you as my bodyguard, Alisan reasoned, you can rescue me. Basically. The man rubbed the back of his neck. It's a diplomatic cover. It won't fool anyone, but going through the motions will mollify the other powers. No one's going to get their panties in a twist over a lone knight pursuing justice as long as the niceties are observed. I see. Alisan started reading through the contract. What happens if I don't sign it? Then we can't help you. The voice was female. It came out of Brock's armor. You'll be on your own. Brock noted the confusion of the princess. Princess, Alisan, I'd like you to meet Mara. Elisa barely stopped a scowl from crossing her face. Jealousy reared its ugly head. That voice was gorgeous, and the way he smiled when he introduced her. Mara is the voice of my Eidolon, the human explained. Oh. Elisa felt silly. It's nice to meet you. We need the excuse, as thin as it is. Mara continued. More than that, we need your consent. It would be wrong to impose our assistance against your wishes. Okay. Can I have a minute? I need to read this. No princess would be so foolish as to sign a contract without reading it first. Read fast, Highness. The human drew his sword. More guards are coming. Elisa's eyebrows rose as she read the contract. Did Brock know what was in this? Probably not, she decided. Unless he'd fallen in love from afar. She squinted at the human as he faced the door to her chambers. His sword was a gun again. Guards spilled into the room. Brock vaporized them. Could that be? Did he see her picture and fall in love? The thought thrilled and terrified Elisa. A suitor from across the stars. It sounded like a dream, but the princess knew better. No one loved her. Wanted her, yes, but loved? So many had tried for her hand, but not one had cared to know the woman herself. They only wanted the princess for her body or her influence. What if Brock was like that? Or worse, what if he didn't want her at all? The princess forced her anxiety down. This was no time to be thinking about boys, especially alien boys with an agenda. Elisa found no traps in the contract, or at least, none for her. She signed and handed it back. Took you long enough, the human griped. All right, let's get... He trailed off as Elisa dashed to her closet. What are you doing? Accessorizing, she told him. Her shimmering crimson gown was sleek and stylish and perfect. Or it would be if it had pockets. Elisa had never needed pockets before. Carrying things had been a job for the servants. For the first time in her life, the princess cursed her own sense of style. Accessorizing? Brock had to dash over to the closet as a new contingent of guards burst into the bedchamber. He covered her with his shield as phasers rained down. Are you serious? Deadly, she assured the man. Now where was... she pulled out a thin white belt adorned with gemstones. It wasn't perfect, but only the most savvy of stylists would notice the difference. She strapped the belt around her waist. You're seriously worried about fashion right now? Brock finished turning the last guard into a pile of ash. We're in the middle of a coup attempt. A princess must keep up appearances, Elisa told him primly. She stepped gingerly up to one of the slaughtered guards, trying to keep her fancy shoes out of the blood. She pulled a sidearm out of the corpse's holster. And I needed somewhere to keep the gun. Oh. The human's irritation faded. Fair enough. You good now? Yes. She frowned. But I have questions. Then let's go. The knight waved her towards him. Stay close. I'll fill you in on the way. The two of them left Elisa's finely appointed bedchamber. The hallway was littered with the ashes of her home guard, a grim spectacle, out of place in the spotless, spacious, gold-trimmed hall. The princess decided to ask the most important question first. Why are you helping me? It's a long story. Brock answered. The short version is that your kingdom's about to be sold into slavery, and we need you to help stop it. Elisa stopped walking. What? Don't stop, said the knight. Elisa didn't move. Explain, now. The knight spun past her, shield extended. Phaser fire burned through the air. It stopped a few inches from the shield. Brock returned fire. We need to keep moving, you idiot! They know where we are! Not until... The princess gasped as the knight grabbed her. He pulled her in with crushing strength. A globe of golden light enveloped the both of them. Half a second later, the hallway exploded. There was no sound, just a flash of light. Stone and steel fell upon them. The palace had collapsed. The knight released Elisa. She stepped back, staring. The globe of light was still there, holding back the tons of elegant marble that should have crushed her. Well, The energy sphere illuminated everything in soft gold light. Alisan turned to the human. He looked annoyed, but not particularly concerned. Whatever that sphere was, he wasn't worried it would fail and get them squished. Alisan changed her question. Can we get out? Easily, the human assured her. But we should wait a bit. The sphere of protection's hiding our life signs. With any luck, they'll think we're dead. Oh. The princess crossed her arms. Good. Then you have plenty of time to explain. I guess so. The man nodded. All right. First off, you've been lied to. The Illurian Empire is not the greatest empire in the universe. It's a third-rate monarchy. Elisa An tried to slap the man. He caught her wrist. Don't do that, he warned. The armor's got... The princess punched him in his perfect jawline, or at least that's what she tried to do. Instead of a satisfying thud, she heard a horrible, sickening crunch. Pain like nothing she'd ever felt dropped her to her knees. Elisa An screamed. Defenses. The human sighed. Elisa An looked down. Her hand, oh gods, her hand was shattered. Spokes of bone protruded from her skin. The princess had never felt such pain. I tried to warn you. The knight kneeled down next to her. Elisa An didn't answer. She was busy screaming. Okay, let me see. The knight reached out slowly. The princess barely resisted the urge to jerk her hand out of reach. The silvery metal of his armor flowed off his hand like liquid, sliding onto Elisa An. The pain stopped, like flipping a switch. The princess gasped in relief. She stayed on her knees, panting. When she got her breath back, she snarled at the man. I should have you executed. That'll be a neat trick, Brock quipped. Go ahead. Call the guards. Elisa An glared at the man. Oh, wait. The human continued his sarcasm. You can't. They're trying to kill you. Elisa An tried to slap him again. He caught her arm. Whoa, let's not do that again. He looked meaningfully at her shattered hand. The princess glared harder, feeling the fool. Hey, Mara. Brock let her go and spoke into his wrist. Do you think pathological idiot is a real condition? Be nice, Brock, chided the Eidolon. The princess has had a hard day. The human frowned, looking closer at the princess. Elisa An turned her face away, wiping at her eyes with the sleeve of her elegant gown. You're right, he told the Eidolon. He sighed again. I'm sorry, princess. You should be. Elisa An tried not to sniffle. I am, really. Brock's armor peeled away from his other hand. He placed it on her shoulder. It was warm. You've lost so much, and I was unkind. Elisa An met his eyes. My parents. The knight nodded. I know. They loved me, you know? The princess didn't know why she needed to tell him, but she did. I know they weren't always nice, but they loved me. We shared a meal less than a year ago. You shared a meal? Brock frowned. A year ago? They were busy people. Elisa An bristled. They had an empire to rule, but they made time for me. We shared a meal 4 times. 4 times. The knight's face darkened. In your whole life? Yes. Elisa An tried to smile. They must have loved me a lot. Oh, princess. The man's eyes glistened. His armor flowed away. Strong arms reached for her. She tensed at first. The man didn't pull her, didn't squeeze. He just wrapped himself gently around the woman. A princess must not cry. Elisa An knew that, had known that her whole life. But in this moment, with this man, something broke. Elisa An clutched at him, heedless of her damaged hand. She pressed her face into his chest with a wail. Tears and mucus soaked into his shirt as she sobbed. The man held her. He began to murmur. It's all right. It's all right. Let it out. It's okay. I'm here. One arm tightened around her. With the other, he began to stroke her hair. No one had ever touched her like that. Elisa An cried harder. She cried for a long time. When she finally finished, she did not want to let him go. "You smell really good," she told him. Thanks." Brock's hand trailed along the princess's arm as he slowly pulled away. He cleared his throat. "Anyway, I should get back to explaining things." "Just don't insult the Empire," she warned him. "I'm not trying to be insulting," said the human, "but you need to know the truth. The Elurian Empire owns 83 worlds. Only 4 of them are life-bearing. You're a small power, and your family's dynasty has spent the last several decades running into the ground." 83 worlds isn't small," the princess objected. "The United Worlds of Gaia have over 2 million worlds." Brock told her. "Tens of thousands of them bear life." Oh. The princess was starting to feel very small. The human continued. "Your economy's a shambles. Your people are on the verge of revolt, and your military's been gutted by graft and corruption. If that wasn't bad enough, your parents managed to alienate the entire staff and all of their generals." He grimaced. That's when the Galdovans stepped in. Galdovans? Elisa Hahn had heard the name before, but she couldn't quite place it. "One of the 3 galactic superpowers," Brock explained. "Roughly equivalent to the United Worlds. They're slavers, and worse. The Knights oppose them whenever we can." "Can't you just, I don't know, declare war on them?" Elisa Hahn asked. "We could," said the Knight. "But what happens to the Galdovan people if we take out their government? We'd just make things worse, cause suffering and chaos on a galactic scale. Anyway," Brock continued, "the Galdovans made a deal with your Aunt Cindy. They gave her funds, weapons, intel, helped her set up a coup. In return, she's going to authorize the annexation of Eluria." "Why would she do that?" Elisa Hahn frowned. She hated to admit it, but Cindy could probably have orchestrated a coup without foreign help. What could the Galdovans offer that she couldn't just do herself? "Immortality, for one thing." Brock shrugged. "Their meds tech's a lot more advanced than yours. They can keep their nobles young forever." With a start, he noticed his torso was still unarmored. The metal flowed back into position. It flowed away from Elisa Hahn's broken hand as well. The princess stared in amazement. Her hand was whole, like nothing had happened to it. "They've got other perks, but that's the one that gets most people to turn traitor." "Oh." Eternal youth. Elisa Hahn ran a hand through her hair. What would she give to live forever? To be young forever, beautiful forever? She shook her head. She'd give a lot, but she wouldn't give her people. It was unforgivable. Cindy had to be stopped. Anyway, Brock looked at his wrist. "I think we've waited long enough. Let's get to Mara and get off this rock." "Leave?" "No." The princess decided. "What do you mean, no?" asked the human. "We've got to—" "No." Elisa Hahn cut him off. "You have to take me to Cindy." "Are you insane?" Brock sputtered. "The whole planet's trying to kill you." "Aunt Cindy killed my parents," Elisa Hahn reminded him. "She's trying to enslave my empire. She has to be stopped." "I can't do that," said Brock. "I'm not an assassin." "You don't have to," she told him. "I'll kill her myself." "Princess." "You're my bodyguard, right?" Elisa Hahn demanded. "Guard my body. That's all you have to do." "You should help her, Brock," said the Eidolon. "But her cause is righteous, and it's her choice to make." The man searched Elisa Hahn's face. She did her best to look bold and determined. His face hardened, and he nodded slowly. "All right. I can't kill Cindy for you, but I'll get you there and protect you as best I can." He talked into his wrist. "Mara, do you know where Cindy is?" "Sending the location now," said the Eidolon. "All right." The knight held out his hands. "Get close and grab on." The princess stepped in and wrapped herself around him. Bands of metal flowed from his armor, strapping her in place. "Brace yourself," said the man. "This is going to be an experience." The knight's sword morphed into a cannon. The barrel of the weapon was wider than he was. He pointed it straight up. The column of light hissed forth. Elisa yelped as Brock shot upwards, following the opening made by the cannon. Elisa held on for dear life. Then they were above the remains of the palace. The city of Venus spread below them. Brock was already moving. She felt a sickening lurch as houses and trees flashed by. It wasn't hard to guess where they were going. The Hall of the Throne. It was only a few kilometers. She arrived in seconds. The great dome that covered the hall was 80 meters high. Brock raised his cannon. It morphed into a smaller gun. Elisa winced at the precious history that was about to be damaged. Brock fired. A section of the dome disintegrated. The two of them burst into the throne room itself. The imperial throne room was a bastion of power and opulence. It had seating for 20,000 people, and a dais that towered 50 meters above the ground. Two great thrones sprouted from the dais. A great dome covered the room, adorned with murals of the founders of Illyria, or what was left of it did. Brock had left a hole 20 meters wide. Aunt Cindy sat primly on one of the thrones. Her red hair had been styled into a curly mass, held back by a crown. Her dress was white. A man stood next to her, alien, lizard-like. He wore robes of shimmering gold. The rest of the room was half full. People were still streaming in. Elisa guessed her aunt had been planning a speech. Cindy stared for a moment as Brock flew closer. Then she smiled. Her eyes were like ice. Brock sat down in front of the room. He kept a shield between the princess and the guards. "Little Elisa." Cindy's smile widened. Her eyes grew colder. "Come to pay your respects to your new queen, I see. How thoughtful." The princess did not deign to reply. "Brock," she murmured, "can you make it so everyone can hear me?" The human nodded. "Done." Princess Elysian spread her arms wide as she approached the throne. "People of Illyria, hear me. I am Princess Elysian Allure, and I tell you this woman is a traitor." She pointed at Cindy. "She plans to sell the empire to Galdovan." The princess came to a stop a few meters from the throne. She looked around to see what effect her words had had. The answer was none at all. Silence reigned. Cindy smirked at the girl. "Did you really think?" Elisa shot her in the chest. The princess had not given her speech with any expectation of success. She simply needed a distraction while she stepped past the anti-assassin defenses surrounding the throne. The phaser she'd taken from the dead guard burned a hole through Cindy's chest. Elisa didn't stop there. She kept firing until her former aunt was a bloody, unrecognizable mess. A lot of people were shouting. Elisa looked up to find a large number of guards shooting at her. Their phaser spears were unable to breach the defenses around the throne. A few of the more enterprising soldiers rushed forward. Brock raised his sword and uttered a single word. "Stop!" To Elisa's surprise, they did. Brock's voice echoed through the throne room as he continued. "Your coup has failed. Your pretender is dead. Lay down your weapons." His sword shifted into a cannon. "I don't want to kill you, but I absolutely will." It took the home guard mere moments to decide. Weapons clattered to the ground. A chillingly urbane voice remarked, "Well, that was unexpected." It was the lizard man. Elisa whipped her phaser towards him, but Brock seized the barrel of the weapon. "Don't bother," said the knight. "He's not really here." "Correct, Sir Knight." The lizard man smiled. "My ship departed the moment I learned you were here. This is but a humble projection." "And you are?" asked the knight. "My name is Varno." The Galdovan gave an elegant bow. The human's eyes narrowed into slits. "Varno Zaniger." "The same." Varno smiled. "I see my reputation precedes me." The smile disappeared. "And you are Brock Holloway, Knight of the Nye." I did not know the knights involved themselves in the affairs of foreign nations. We don't, said Brock. I'm not brave enough for politics. I'm just a bodyguard for the princess here. A bodyguard? Varno hummed. I see. You knights do love your technicalities. You can't have my empire, the princess growled. That is a poor choice of last words, said the Galdovan. Not the worst I've heard, but a bit cliched, don't you think? What are you talking about? The knight demanded. Not all of my ships left orbit when I did, the Galdovan explained. Coming here was a mistake, Brock Holloway. You should have taken the girl to the safety of your Eidolon. He raised his hand. You're a dead man, Varno, Brock growled. That is also a poor choice of last words. The Galdovan snapped his fingers. A flash snapped Elysion's gaze upward. Through the hole of the dome, she saw a torrent of green light. She flinched, expecting swift death. A shining figure shimmered into view. It resembled a man in armor with a metal face and glowing blue eyes. An Eidolon. 50 meters of overwhelming force, shining with the light of justice. In one hand, it held a shield. In the other, hand was raised. Open! The green light of the Galdovan cannon swirled in front of it. A blast that could shatter a city condensing into a ball. Yeah, the human drawled. Little known fact, I don't have to be inside the Eidolon to fly her. How disappointing. The Galdovan shook his head. The Eidolon released the ball of light. It shot upwards, no doubt destroying the ship that had attacked. But I suppose it doesn't matter in the end. Oh, it matters, said the princess. I, Princess Elysion Allure, heir to the throne of Alluria, declare war on the Galdovan Empire. I will slay your leaders and free your people to live under my benevolent rule. You'll what? Varno Xanagar laughed. I've seen your army, little lady. Your kingdom couldn't fight off a cold. Furthermore, the princess ignored him. I call on the Knights of the Nye for aid. Foolish girl. Varno sneered. The Knights would never. The Knights of the Nye accept your call for aid. Mara's voice boomed through the throne room. Elysion looked up. The Eidolon was hovering just over the hole in the dome. Blue eyes stared into the soul of the princess. We will be your sword. In return, you must take the mantle of righteous cause. No, yelled the human. You can't. She's just a girl. Understand, child. Mara continued. You do not have to take this path. We can take you away and keep you safe. If you do choose to accept the mantle, you can never turn aside. I am a princess, said Elysion. There is no other path. I accept. So be it. The Eidolon's eyes flashed. A piece of alien metal flew out of the machine, latching on to Elyson's wrist to form a bracelet. You can't do this, Varno protested. Engaging in war, setting up a puppet government. The other powers won't stand for it. Let them stop us if they can, intoned the Eidolon. But there will be no puppets. We are simply lending our strength to Elysion Allure, that she may follow her righteous cause. You can't, Varno started. Begone! The Eidolon waved its hand. The Galdovan disappeared. Brock stared at the princess. He looked lost. Oh, princess, he mourned. You don't know what you've done. I do, Elysion told him. I've promised to live a life of strife and hardship, serving my people until the day I die. She smiled at him. I'm a princess, Brock. It's what I'm supposed to do. Well spoken. Mara's voice came out of Brock's armor this time. It was quieter. Your sacrifice will not be in vain, or unrewarded. What reward could you possibly give her? Brock was bitter. The best kind, said Mara. We gave her you, Brock. He blinked. What? We gave her you. Mara repeated. The contract you signed. It promises your service for the rest of her life, or until she releases you from duty. It what? The knight's face contorted in rage. How could you? It's all right. Elysion held out her hand. If you don't want me, I'll release you. She very much didn't want the knight to leave, but she owed the man her life. She couldn't make him stay. I'll let you go. She turned away from him. A princess must not cry. Look at her, Brock. Mara spoke softly. A life with no love and precious little kindness. Raised by monsters to do monstrous things. And look at her. She's trying her hardest to do what is right. Is that not a woman worthy of protection, Brock Holloway? Is that not a cause worth fighting for? He was silent. She couldn't look at him. Just when she felt she could bear it no longer, he spoke. It is. She is. A hand cupped her chin, turned her face to him. His eyes were soft. I'm yours, princess, for as long as you will have me. Then he scowled at his wrist. But I would have liked to have been asked first. You would have said yes anyways. Mara told him. You think she's hot. Mara! Brock protested. His face was turning red. I can see your vitals, Brock. Mara reminded him. I know the effect she has on you. Yeah, but I'm not... The human sputtered. You're not supposed to tell her that. You really think I'm beautiful? Elysion asked. The look she gave him made his jaw go slack. The human was too stunned to answer. It's okay, Brock. Elysion stepped closer. She kissed the knight, her knight, on the cheek. She whispered in his ear, I think you're beautiful too. The human swallowed. You do? Oh, yes. She kissed him again, on the lips, and more thoroughly this time. You're the most beautiful man in the universe. Her smile turned fierce. Anyone who says otherwise will be executed.